first person to enter Islam was a woman. The first martyr in Islam, Sumayya, was a woman. When the Quran was entrusted by all the tribes, right, they had to figure out, who do we give this book to? The first Quran, who do we give this book to? Because it holds all the power. And they didn't trust the heads of the tribe who were men. Who did they give it to? To Hafsa bin Omar, to a woman, right? The first Sufi saint, the person to introduce mysticism and spirituality in Islam, was what? A woman, Rabia Naqvi. So when we really think about it, and for me, I don't think it's a coincidence, I think it was a reminder that the patriarch would come in to religion, that there would be a moment in time where we would lose our tradition. And for me, it's just as important. As much as I like to acknowledge our tradition, I like to acknowledge that we've begun to lose it. We don't treat the Muslim women the way we once did. Inheritance laws, laws for voting is one of the most difficult things for women in Muslim majority countries to come across. And for me, I feel no embarrassment acknowledging it because I know it's not part of my religion. And I know the only way to reclaim it is through my religion. So I don't see a contradiction, and I'm very proud to take off the rose-colored glasses and say, here's what's wrong with how people are trying to use Islam against women. And here's what we've lost. By going so far into the patriarchal system, we've lost the power of the feminine. And I really worry because what we're being told over and over is to be powerful, you have to be masculine. And what Islam has told us is that no, there's power in both, and there's power in the balance, and there's power when we're together. And so what women need to do is not only reclaim their heritage, but reclaim that feminine leadership style. Reclaim what we know best and not try to only emulate. Now, you already spoke about Nusayba bin Ka'b, but one of the things that I love the most is when she stood up and asked the Prophet, why does God only speak to the men? I want you to think about this for a moment. Can you imagine any Muslim woman standing up in Friday prayer and challenging not the Prophet, she's challenging God himself, right? She's challenging the divine, saying, why is he only speaking to men? Right? We can't even ask a scholar, we can't even ask an imam those type of questions these days without being told, it's not allowed, it's not respectful, right? But women at the time of the Prophet were pushing back and they were asking. And the Prophet didn't say, don't be disrespectful. The Prophet didn't say, trust me. What happened was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself responded with an ayah that came down addressing both the masculine and the feminine. So we really, and it's one of the things that I'm always insisting on, is we really have to have faith in our faith. And to do that, it means we push and we ask the difficult conversations. We ask the questions that bother us, the questions. We don't just say, okay, you know what, I'm going to turn to blind faith, because Islam has never asked that from us. And it's funny, because I was reminded when I was in Uganda, I was sitting with a Muslim woman who had been illiterate, and she taught herself how to read. And when I asked her, I said, and then she went on to open a school to teach other people how to read. And so I asked her, I said, how did you come to this project, to doing this illiteracy? She said, I came to it through Islam. She looked at me like I was so silly. She's like, I came to it through Islam, of course. And she said, reminding me, she said, Manal, the first verse to come down to us was read. It wasn't pray, it wasn't fast, it wasn't wear a scarf for sure. It was read. And so she said, how can I reclaim my humanity? How can I reclaim being a woman in the community if I can't read when that's the first command that came down? And she said, once I began to read, and I began to see what Islam actually says, not what everyone's been telling me Islam has been said, then I wanted every woman to be able to read. Because I knew that that was the most powerful, and I understood why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had commanded us to read. Because we don't get to turn to others, we don't get to blame the scholars, we don't get to turn to other people and ask them why they haven't taught us, because we have the Quran in our hands, right? We have the divine message. And even if we don't fully understand, I know as many times as every single time I read, I discover a whole new layer, a whole new meaning. We also know that there's healing in the vibration, there's healing in the community, there's healing by being with together. Now, one of the things that I do want to go back to is the idea of being really conscious about what culture is and what religion is, because that's the other layer that I think that we're often misguided on. We're often not told what the actual context and what the actual history is. And like I said, I've challenged myself, and I've actually established a dialogue called Cross Red Lines, where no issue is off topic. And I'm encouraging Muslim women, whatever it is. I remember there was a point in time, there was a part of the Quran that talks about what the right hand possesses. And I remember I couldn't wrap my head around it. And so I would just skip it. Every time that chapter came in the Quran, I would just skip it, and I told myself, just have faith. And when the time comes, you'll begin to understand the depth. And it did. Eventually I pushed and I asked the scholars, and I began to comprehend just the larger framework that Islam brings to us. But if I hadn't really ever gone back, I don't think I would have been able to go in the depth of my faith the way I needed to. And that's why I started Cross Red Lines, is to encourage women. There is no topic we shouldn't challenge, whether it's sexuality, whether it's issues related to political, whether it's about leadership. There's always an answer when it comes to the religion. Now the question is, just like I said, that women in war, they don't just stop at themselves, they turn to their community, is how can women begin to turn to their community now? And I think that the most important thing, all the women you listen, all the women here, whether it's fighting violent extremism or whether it's fighting Islamophobia, you're seeing overwhelmingly that women are at the front lines. And one of the things that I hope we do today and challenge each other to continue to do is, how do we then turn and hold our hand out back to the community and help the community come with us? Because the biggest fear that I have is what we're seeing is to see people retreat, and they're becoming defensive. And in trying to protect Islam, they don't want to have the difficult conversations, which means we won't be able to evolve as a community. And just think about it. When you're defensive, what's your posture? Right? You're closed. You're covering your face. And worse, you're covering your heart. To really be open and to really evolve, we've got to be open. We've got to put our hands down, not be defensive, be forward leading. And this is what people attribute to the feminine style of leadership. This is feminine study, it's nothing to do with Islam. And what you see is fluidity, you see consultation, remember Queen Balqis, right? You see openness, you see transparency. And most importantly, women don't fall in the binary. And they don't have that luxury of extremism, because they have to survive day to day. Right? And so all those skills today is what our ummah needs. It's what our community needs at large. And so I invite you whether you're Muslim or not, if you're a Muslim woman, if you're a woman of faith, if you're a woman, embrace the feminine leadership, because the community needs it now more than ever. And I truly believe it's our first step towards not only healing us, but healing our nation. And when you look at the extremism and the violence in the world, it's also a step towards healing the world. And don't ever think that one person can't do it. I've seen it too many times where one woman emerges with an idea and transforms communities. And I know that I want to be one of those women. I already see it in you. You're doing it. And I hope that all of you will join us as well. I really look forward to the question and answers. It's my favorite part, so I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you.
Allahu Akbar.
Excellent on both of them. We're going to open up for any questions, and please ask them questions. Please engage.
Safe space. And difficult ones too. Bring it on. Oh, not you. I'm kidding.
I got a question. So, my name is Ali, first off. I was born and raised Muslim. I don't practice anymore, but spirituality doesn't come from one faith. My question is, right, like she was saying, if the Quran itself said, okay, if you treat my daughter this way, if you honor my daughter, you honor me. And if you disrespect her, you disrespect me. Why is it that women in the Muslim world are being treated so badly? Like, I can't wrap my hand around it. Because the book you're trying to preach to these people that says, hey, look, this is the deal, but you totally contradicting yourself by, looking down on women. I don't, it baffles me. Maybe you can help me with it.
So I think Manal actually touched on the answer with sort of the split between culture and faith.
Right.
So the problem, I think, as a Muslim woman growing up, that's very independent and bold, I struggled with that question myself, right? Any thinking person would be like, what's going on? The book says I have all these rights and power, but in practice, the community seems to be limiting me. And I think you're correct in seeing that in many Muslim majority nations, not all, right?
Right.
And there are ways that you see, first of all, it being fought even in those societies. Put those pictures up here, right, as one of the female leaders of Pakistan. I think we have to oftentimes do that struggle between culture and faith where we push back on culture, because culture predates faith, right? So a lot of the oppressive practices that faith is sometimes stigmatized with are actually cultural precedents that faith came to destroy in some ways, right? Islam came and gave us so many rights that culture was denying us. I mean, and I'm not saying culture is all bad. I mean, my mom tells me I come off as saying that. I'm not. I think there are beautiful things in culture, but where as a person of faith, I believe I can pick and choose between culture. I think if there's a battle between the two, my faith should always win. And I will use that to combat people within my own community trying to hold me down with religious precedent. And then what are you going to tell me? Right? When I say, right here, it says I can do this, this, and this. But that stuff takes time, and it takes, I think, a lot of people stepping up to force the change.
No, I think you covered it really well. I mean, the only thing that I would add is that I truly believe that there is a global war on the feminine. And I think that Islam is one of the most dramatic where you see it in the Muslim majority world, you see it very dramatically, but if you look across the board, and I hate to say it, I mean, I've always pointed out between the double standards between like the Muslim majority and between America, but more than ever, we're really seeing how fragile women's rights are in America. I mean, even more so than Europe. I mean, it's incredibly fragile. And the exploitation of women and the use of women in terms of consumption and consumerism, I think is one of the biggest crimes that has ever happened to women in the country. And I would even go very gloomy and go even so far as to say that the moment we started to privatize land, right, Mother Earth, when we thought we could own it, right, that was one of the first declarations of war on women. And we don't really, again, we're afraid to talk about the power of the feminine, and it starts with Earth. So for me, the environment and climate change and all of that, it's part of the feminine. And you look at the mass desertification, you look at global warming, and we know that the feminine is often represented in water and in fluidity, right? And so as we begin to see across the globe, look at the water crises. This is a symbol of a crisis against feminine. And so Earth really mirrors the energy of humans. And so we need to really begin to reclaim that and to own that. And I as a person of faith, I mean, what you were describing about walking in, I can't tell you, oftentimes I may be a lead negotiator, sometimes when I walk into rooms, and particularly if I have staff that are, people in the region will call them the real Americans, people come up to me, I get all the time, where's the real American? And I'm like,
Right here.
I am American. People would treat me like a translator.
Yeah.
And I've been tapped on the shoulder and asked to go back to the translation booth over and over. And so, this underestimation of Muslim women and taking Muslim women outside of the context of the larger issue of women's rights, I think is a really dangerous trap. We have to be careful because I see we fall into it too, even within the Muslim community. Again, I don't wear rose-colored glasses. We have a lot of problems. But our problems are part of a larger issue that's happening with religion overall, which I believe is institutionalization, and I would go even one step further and say patriarchal institutionalization has really ruined religion.
Where I think, right, and to build on that, I think, as I was saying, culture predates institutionalized religion, let me say, right? So what that means is patriarchy was embedded pretty deep in many of these cultures. So to undo that takes a lot of change, and you've seen it in US history, when populations are denied access to power and change-making institutions, it takes really monumental movements which can be one woman, by the way, right? But it takes a force to be reckoned with to start chipping away at that.
I think that having faith can repair a relationship with yourself in order to change the patriarchal institution or culture that we have. And like widespread improvement of self-relationship and relationships with your own faith as well. How would that change to reflect the whole cultural change?
Sure, I mean, I think, to have faith, and particularly in the way that you're describing it, I think it really means that you begin to know yourself and really look inward, and I think that there's a lot of power when you look at us compared to the cosmos, like we're insignificant, right? We're less than a little piece of dust when you look at the big scheme of things. But when you look at you and you look inward, you're almost the status of a goddess, right? Because you have full control of your internal when you make that choice. And that becomes to be where you have the shift, right? Once you really begin to know yourself, and part of that is knowing what we call the nafs, the ego, and knowing that your soul is connected to the divine. And once you begin to really that power creates a shift, and people suddenly want to be able to experience it with you. But it can't happen unless you do the work yourself. I mean, that transformation happens when you transform yourself. That's